Hello again, friends. How are you fine folks doing today? So, I'd like to address consequence culture now, specifically the issues with Jordan Neely. So, the political left these days, talks about consequence culture, usually in the context of, if someone says an idea that's politically incorrect, uses a certain word, for instance, then it's alright to retaliate against that person with political violence. And it's always some form of violence when they're talking about acceptable consequence culture, right? Acting against your bank, acting against you in a physical manner, acting against you somehow, right? You're somehow responsible for the things you say, and that is going to cause people to act in a way that's violent towards you for expressing an idea, saying something they disapprove of, expressing a concept they disapprove of, what have you, right? They're going to use all sorts of different methodologies to justify consequence culture, right? And yet, the entire thing is so substantially hypocritical, because then you have a situation where someone makes, apparent death threats, and then, they F around and find out, and sadly, they found out. And obviously, in the case of Jordan Neely, for instance, this was an accident. Everyone watching assumed it was an accident. He didn't intend to end this person's life. He just wanted to restrain them, and he used a little bit too much force. And, that's certainly an issue, but I'm not hearing a lot of these people that happen to feel this way ever go on and discuss, the consequences of their own actions when they say murder someone for wearing a red hat in public, or, someone getting beat on the street. They, in fact, will justify it oftentimes someone getting randomly assaulted because of the language they used. And you can certainly argue a lot of things, but I don't think you can argue that using the N-word is anywhere near as bad as a death threat. Just one is protected free speech, the other is, not protected free speech. You're not allowed to intimidate people, you're not allowed to, terrorize people. Terrorism is illegal. You're not allowed to make terroristic threats. Just period. And obviously that's how it should be. I'm a free speech extremist. In my opinion, even making terroristic threats shouldn't be something punishable. I don't think, for instance, Jordan Neely should have been restrained, period, because I don't believe in consequences for speech at all. I don't believe even in, inciting riots. I'm a free speech absolutist. I believe any and all speech is protected. It does not matter the context of it. You punish actions, you do not punish thought crimes, which is what punishing any type of free speech ever will result in, is punishing thought crimes. No matter how you want to constrain it or how you want to go about it, at the end of the day, if someone is acting in a way which you disapprove of verbally, you can just not listen. You can't not listen to someone holding a gun to your head and firing. You cannot not listen to someone putting you in a chokehold in your life. And of course, Neely is going to suffer some kind of legal consequences, and I think he should. I think it's a manslaughter. I think manslaughter is a pretty fair charge. I don't think, as someone, even on the political right, looking at this situation, I don't think, he should have physically restrained him until he does something beyond, making a threat. At least from my own moral framework. But from a legal framework, I don't believe Neely is guilty of anything, legally speaking, if we look at the law as it is, as far as free speech is in the United States, because what the man murdered was saying was, in fact, not protected free speech. You're not allowed to say those things. And did he deserve to die over it? Of course not. But it was an accident. At the end of the day, though, that would be a part of consequence culture. He said the N-word in the subway, That's just the world we live in, where this is kind of acceptable, at least on the political diaspora, and I don't agree with it. I believe that all speech should be free speech, that there is no delineation between, any sort of terroristic threat, any sort of N-word, anything. It does not matter what you say, at least in my opinion, it should be allowed. It should be perfectly acceptable. But the rest of the world doesn't agree with that kind of a standpoint, so we have situations like this where, legally speaking, Neely should go free. It's in New York, so the guy's probably done anyways, which I'm not shedding any tears over it. Some steroided up Marine did something silly. Tale as old as time, one would say. But at the end of the day, he also put someone out of the world that didn't deserve to exist in the world. So it's just a win-win all around for me. We have some, you know, crazed like guy off the street who isn't going to put anyone else in any chokeholds, and we have, you know, some drained dredge of society gone as well. It's just a win-win all around as far as I'm concerned. Ooh, I'm not allowed to say such naughty things, but you know, I'm a free speech extremist. It's just with the territory here. Like, if you're listening to me, you better enjoy that kind of content, or else you're not gonna like the things I have to say, especially when I'm off the rails. Plus, I'm having a little bit of alcohol, so my lips are a little bit looser than they normally would be. If only I could say the things I want to say. That's the tyranny, though, that we live in and under today, under big tech censorship. We live in this, you know, free speech authoritarian style government. We don't actually have a real government here in the United States, and we need. The only policy that ever makes sense going forward is free speech absolutionism, and I'm sad in my Universal Truths video that I didn't talk about free speech, because you either have free speech fully, as in you can say anything, period, or you don't have free speech at all. And, you know, there is no idea that can be questioned, or any sort of action you can call for that shouldn't happen, where you should be held accountable for. It should always be, you know, until the action happens, there should be no crime. So now, if you say, hey, kill XYZ, and then he dies, okay, suddenly you're involved in manslaughter. Suddenly you are facing the consequences for your actions because they're actual consequences. I don't believe in consequences without any causation, you know, as one could say. And I don't think there's any sort of realistic argument against pure, total free speech. The fact that bad things might happen is not an argument. Bad things are going to happen, you know, universally. You can't change that. You can prevent bad things from happening through reason, through interacting with people, through proper discussion, and you're not going to get that when you're censoring people in any way, shape, or form. So this Neely case really brings the hypocrisy, though, of consequence culture and cancel culture up in the forefront, and I thought it's an interesting thing to think about, right? And obviously all the people involved are absolutely mongoloids, like absolute subhuman tier, and the world is better without them. But going forward, you know, if we want to prevent things like this, we really need to start working on a framework where people are accounted for in their actions, and where, you know, this type of stuff is not allowed. But we also need to, you know, to make it perfectly clear, you're allowed to say some stupid stuff on a subway. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. There shouldn't ever be anything wrong with that. And the political left is right about that, but they're wrong about it in the sense that it violates their own principles. It does not violate, for instance, a free speech absolutist principle to say that, you know, Neely was in the wrong because, you know, the person hadn't done anything yet, and it was questionable whether he was capable of doing anything. But he couldn't know that, so he has to act in self-defense preemptively, because in the United States, words are violence. And I think that's the main, like, horror of modern day, is that somehow words are violent, and it's just simply not true. Like, violence is violence. You know, people die when they are killed. It should be basic common sense, but most people really aren't associated with it anymore and aren't even thinking about it, really. And it's just a sad state of affairs that this is even a question of whether he did right or wrong. Like, as a right-leaning person, I believe he was in the wrong here. I don't think, you know, he should have restrained him, period. Like, okay, some schizo's saying some schizo stuff. I say schizo stuff all the time. Does that give someone the right to put me in a chokehold? Of course not. Irish cream and coffee. Not that I would ever drink alcohol, by the way, kids. Don't do something like that. That would be illegal and wrong. Well, it's not illegal for me, but for some of you it might be. But, you know, definitely stay away from the booze. But yeah, so as far as going forward and analyzing this situation, I really hope, as far as the deeper meaning of society, we get to a point where we can say to each other, you know, I disagree with what you have to say, but you have the right to say it, and have that apply to any and all words, including the ones we really don't like and we really find socially unacceptable. Because we're entering into a society where, as language is restricted more and more, totalitarianism increases more and more. These things literally go up together, you know. It's not a surprise that this is happening. It's baked into the equation when you start doing things like this, and we really need to analyze where our society is going and how it's going if we're going to let these things continue. And, you know, I'm on the accelerationist train at this point. I'm riding the Kali Yuga, you know. So for me, it doesn't matter. I'm not even sure I'm sticking in America. Like, this country, the West has fallen. Like, and whatever will replace it, will replace it. But is it going to be some sort of enlightenment, like Chinese color revolution? Is it going to be like, who knows? Who cares? Like, hopefully the West lasts longer than my lifetime and I can live in relative peace and harmony. I doubt it, but, if I just look at the Jordan Neely situation, there's probably going to be some sort of South African, like, reparation, sort of, repressatory violence against people in this country. Reprisatory. And I'm sorry for the slurring and the silly words. A little bit tipsy, but, that's what makes the content good, is the little bit of kick. Got that little bit of spice at the end, and that's what makes it poggers. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Jordan Neely. I just hope people start understanding that free speech absolutism will save more lives than it'll harm. And, I think this is a perfect case for that argument, which is really what I wanted to say. And it took me 11 minutes to get to be able to formulate that point enough to, even though it's been in my head for like a day, to be able to formulate that point, to be able to express it in a way. Free speech absolutionism would have saved this man's life. And, two people's lives, because this other guy's going to jail probably for the rest of his life, realistically. Not that I mind, but, it's just universally, if you care about human life, and all life is precious, then you need free speech absolutism. Free speech absolutism, and that would make the world a better place. Sorry, I'm a little tipsy, and I hope you guys are enjoying your day. Have a good day. I'm chopping because I want to chop, as one would say. Peace.